Welcome to Quarantine Creatives. I'm Heath Racela. We got a good one today. This is going to be an exciting one. Roy Wood Jr. is here, stand-up comedian, Daily Show correspondent. Going to be talking to Roy in just a minute here. But first, I want to check in with all you and just see how you're doing. Make sure you're staying safe out there. I feel like people they're starting to get a little lax with all this coronavirus stuff. I'm seeing less masks out there. I'm seeing more people just going out, trying to live life like normal and go out to eat, go out and have fun. And I get it. It sucks to be locked up in your house for months on end. But I don't want you getting sick. And I don't want you getting somebody else that might be vulnerable sick. And if you're looking at the data right now, Arizona's seeing a huge spike. Florida had its largest single-day case count since the beginning of all this in March. Texas is seeing huge spikes. South Carolina. And I just hope people are being smart about it. I feel like this story has fallen off the news radar. You know, Donald Trump has not stood in front of the country in a while now with Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx. We just haven't heard from these people about coronavirus, and it feels like the hope is if we just ignore it, it goes away. And that's not how science works. I feel like some of this is a push to try to get back to normal and to try to recover the economy. And I feel like there's a weird piece of this, sadly, that's about getting people off of unemployment. That there's these record unemployment claims right now. And if a business is open and you choose not to go in, well, then you're not eligible for unemployment, and it sucks to be you. So now people are having to choose between getting this disease, potentially getting exposed to it, or a paycheck. And I think that's really unfortunate. And I just hope that you are still practicing safe habits. You're wearing that mask when you go out. You're washing your hands. You're keeping 6 feet from you and other people. This thing is not going away anytime soon. It feels like we are, a couple hours into a major storm that's going to be lashing us for several days. Like if you've ever been in a hurricane or a tropical storm or something like that, it might be 2 or 3 days where there's just winds and rain and stuff, just, hammering your house. Well, it feels like we're like 6 hours into that storm, and there's still another, 2.5 days to get through. And I just hope we're all recognizing that. So Roy Wood Jr., this is another one of those guests that I never expected to say yes to this show. And I had pitched Roy right at the beginning. I mean, he was probably like the 5th or 6th person I pitched. Never expected to hear anything back. And, it took a day or two, but he wrote me and said, yeah, I'm down, but I got to find the time for it. I can't do it right away. And so it's been about a month since that exchange. We ended up scheduling a talk. And we talked last Friday, and I was really excited to talk to him. He is such an incredible stand-up. If you get a chance, go watch some of his stand-up specials. Father Figure, No One Loves You. He's got a bunch of great stand-up material, and he's a really smart joke writer and a really complex joke writer. So his stand-up is brilliant. But part of what I wanted to talk to him about, too, is just working on The Daily Show. He's been a correspondent there since 2015. He came in at the same time as Trevor Noah. And he has just done a phenomenal job of breaking down all sorts of issues. And we talk about it in the interview, one of them really being police violence. And this is something that he's been covering for the 5 years he's been on The Daily Show. It's not new for him, even though a lot of America is just sort of waking up to this now or reawakening to it. He's been talking about police issues for 5 years on The Daily Show and in his stand-up act going back, almost from the beginning. So it's an interesting time to have talked to him. In some ways, I'm glad that, it took a month to have this conversation with him, because if we had talked prior to George Floyd, I don't think these issues would have come up as much. But because of where we are right now, because of Black Lives Matter and the defund the police movement and all this, his expertise is it's brilliant right now. And the other thing that I really appreciated in this conversation, and honestly, it threw me off a little bit at first, was the Roy that I've seen from a distance, whether that's in his act or on Twitter, he's performing always. I know him as a performer, and I feel like I know his on-stage persona. And even in interviews and stuff that I listened to prior to interviewing him, I felt like I was hearing more from that persona than from the person himself. And you'll hear in this interview, he's not telling jokes in the way that you might expect. He's not performing for me in any way. We're just having a very real, very disarmed conversation. And it's a very technical conversation in a lot of ways. He gets into how his interpretation of the news formulates his comedic voice and the type of comedy he does. He talks about what makes a good Daily Show segment. And just at a really deep level, sort of understanding the technical elements that make a Daily Show segment funny, that make it function. But he's not performing one of those segments for me at all. It's like a textbook of just, hey, you want to be a Daily Show correspondent, here's the stuff you got to know. So it's a very kind of inside baseball conversation that we had. And I was excited for it. I mean, again, it took me a minute to sort of get into that rhythm. But once I knew that that's what we were doing, I just realized this became one of the richest conversations I've had on this show so far, because it was just so technical. It was really about how humor works. And it made me really appreciate Roy's intellect, his sensibility, and just sort of all the pieces that are going on in his brain behind the scenes that get you to that performative side of him, that you need that deep analysis, you need that deep understanding of your own craft in order to get the jokes on stage. So I hope you walk away learning some stuff just about comedy and how it works. So here it is, my conversation with Roy Wood Jr. I'm curious just sort of what your experience has been like over the last 3 months dealing with this quarantine and all.
It's been pretty creatively different.
Yeah.
Because it is different. As a comedian, it is my job to report on the world around me.
Yep.
I feel like comedians are journalists, right?
Yeah, totally.
So you either reporting on what you see or you're reporting on what you feel. Those are essentially the only two types of jokes that exist to me that are of substance. It's not to say other jokes aren't funny, but the jokes that I enjoy are rooted in one of those two things.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to create what you see, and what you see is constantly getting crazier and crazier, for there to really be comedy, things have to bottom out. And you have to have something to build from. In order for jokes to work, we have to all agree on the premise. I think Mike Birbiglia said that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that things keep getting crazier and crazier. No one will agree how. And we still haven't bottomed out. We still haven't bottomed out in 2020. So how do you build jokes when the ground is still shifting under you? That's why what Chappelle did is so amazing. Chappelle's just like, look, I got to clock in. I got to check in.
Yeah.
And this won't be polished, but it will be raw and it will be real. It will be honest. Because I don't think we're even past feeling and digesting everything to really get to a point of constructing humor in the traditional 2019 sense of constructiveness. So, I have peaks and valleys. There's weeks where I write really well and I'm working on old ideas. And there's weeks where I have 40 new ideas that flood my head that would speak more to the times we're in. And it makes the ideas that I've been working on the previous weeks feel irrelevant.
Yeah. Primarily stand-up material.
Well, stand-up ideas and show ideas.
Yeah.
I think they both run hand in hand. I've always longed to be able to do material that speaks to, our conditions as people, as humans. So for me, they kind of run hand in hand.
Gotcha.
In a way.
It's interesting just thinking about that deluge of news over the last couple of weeks, and coronavirus, and not feeling like we're at the end of that yet, and then, George Floyd's death and the protests that have come out of that, and just feeling like that is gaining momentum every day. But we've been in this place of the news just being I don't know, these open floodgates for, doesn't it feel like for 4 or 5 years now it's kind of been that way?
Yeah, I think with Floyd, I think people really aren't taking into account how much COVID played into Floyd in creating that perfect storm of activism. People were already broke,
Yep.
without jobs. Many were sick. Those who recovered have medical bills.
Yep.
So there was a powder keg that was already soaked in kerosene, and Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and then George Floyd. Those all happened within the same month, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, within
They
almost a week of
definitely
each other, I think, right?
correct,
They're very close.
correct.
Yeah.
Within like 2 weeks, so probably put it 2 to 3 weeks, but close enough to where you hadn't gotten past the anguish of one before you got hit with another. While you're getting hit with that one, then you get a video that is just so unprecedented that you just look up and just, people explode. And I think that's what makes this moment, so different. It literally feels like Kobe Bryant died 5 years ago.
Right. And what was that? February, right? January, February.
February. Kobe
Yeah.
Bryant died this year.
Yeah, that's crazy. Just thinking about sort of all these issues, as I look back at sort of your tenure at the Daily Show and your stand-up material as well, the police and sort of the police relationship to the Black community has always been sort of a through line. Like I saw there's a piece you did with Jordan Klepper right at the beginning of your run, I think, looking at bias training.
First week.
Yeah. And then, you did a thing this week on police unions. It just sort of like, I feel like you've been on this beat for a lot longer than the country's been there.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to explore in my stand-up because I can go a little deeper than we have time for on the Daily Show. But, I feel like there's something wrong in law enforcement. And I say that as a person who has 2 badges in his family, and in seeing what's happening in the world, what's always been going on, I'm just going to mention it. And if you choose to pay attention, great. If not, that's cool too. But, I just report about the things that I see and the things that I feel. And I've always felt like there's been, some inequity in how minorities are policed and how laws are constructed. What I really would love to get to the bottom of is politicians and politics, because that's the stuff that really, in my opinion, that's the stuff that, police are just the tip of the sword. Like, we need the hand that's holding it held accountable.
Yeah. And
I think that's the thing that we really have to, that we really need to go after, is the politicians and the people who make the laws, who enable these officers to walk around with impunity.
Do you feel like we're getting to that point now with the protests that are out there and just seeing them grow? It feels like every day there's bigger crowds out there just standing up for this.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely growth happening, but I have no interest in popping the champagne on any of these moments, because, growth 2 years ago was just getting cops to wear body cameras. Right. And then now cops take them off, they turn them off, they weren't on. So remember when that was the victory? Yay, we got body cams. They'll never kill us again now. Wrong. Cops who killed Floyd were wearing theirs and they were running.
Yeah.
So, I think we still, this is progress, but at no point am I ready to say, all right. But it definitely is reassuring. What you're seeing right now is reassuring, because you're seeing white people out there marching. You're seeing young people out there marching. I mean, hell, a 75-year-old white man is out there marching.
Right.
Got knocked down. God bless him. But, that's where we are right now. We're just in it's just a different space-time continuum for activism. But to say that because we had this breakthrough that, surely, I don't think we're rounding third and headed for home.
Comfortably on second, maybe?
Yeah, sliding in a second.
Yeah.
Maybe, this might just be rounding first because I really feel like, a lot of reallocating funds for the police and really looking at the federal level of accountability for misconduct. I think those two things, if we can get that, then I think you're halfway home.
Yeah.
But getting legislation, the problem with racism is that we can't even all agree it's a problem. The difference between racism and other natural disasters and other diseases, that every other disease we agree is a disease. Racism is the only disease that a lot of people go out and nobody goes, well, I don't see AIDS
Yeah.
or Corona's not real. Even if you think Corona was created by the government, you at least acknowledge its existence.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know though. I'm thinking of just like the people that you see out, not wearing masks, or those pool parties in Missouri over Memorial Day, that kind of stuff. Of just, I don't know. It does
Oh
feel like
yeah.
there's two different sets of facts, right? What global
Well,
warming,
it's
racism,
it's
Corona.
I don't care about catching it versus it's not real. I think they're
Okay,
two different things.
gotcha.
It's yeah, it's out there, but it ain't gonna affect me. I
Yep,
don't care nothing about no Corona. AIDS is for gay people.
yep,
You know, that's what they used to say. So that in and of itself, that is acknowledging the existence of it, or it's being overblown. And even if you think it's overblown, at least you believe it's real. And I think there's a lot of people in America that won't give racism just the dignity of existing. Just hear us when we say this is happening.
yeah,
And people go, nope, you're crazy. I got two black friends and they're cool. So fuck what you're talking about.
right. And I guess that's the power of video too. I think like it just there's something about seeing that George Floyd tape when you have video proof of something, it puts it in a different context, right?
Yeah, I mean, technology advances the conversation. A lot of people could say the same about Ray Rice as it relates to me too.
Yep.
Technology plays a role in advancing the conversation. Definitely, we're in a position where if you look at, how can I put it, like the way the Selma March was, organized by Dr. King to be shown on TV so that America could see black people being brutalized
Yep.
in the South.
Yep.
You know, imagery is something that's a very, very powerful part of activism, unfortunately. It sucks that it has to be that way. But the only reason people celebrate technology's advancement is because there's people who still don't believe that racism is real.
Yeah.
So you have to literally show it to them. And even when you show it to them, it's still twisted into, well, what did he do? And
Right.
he was a bad person and, whatever.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how you get past that. I mean, that's the scary thing in all this, I guess. I want to shift just to sort of the Daily Show for a minute and just sort of hearing your experience with the quarantine and making the show from home and all that. Like when that change first started, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? How did the process of making the show change?
First thing is everybody had to get better lights for their cameras.
Yep.
So this is when I knew it was like, oh, okay, this is going to be like this for a while. Is when they sent us camera mounts and ring lights.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, we're home. Okay. That's when I knew that, like, as the young people say, shit was going down.
Yeah. The first week or so, were the shows just going to YouTube? Is that like they weren't even going to air at first, right? It was just kind of Trevor
Correct.
doing
No,
monologues and stuff. Yeah.
The first week was strictly YouTube.
Yeah.
And that went well. We figured out a model, and we were the first one in late night to get back on the horse. And it felt like the right thing to do. Like, even if we weren't going to be in studio and not have the razzle dazzle and audience and all of that jive, it still felt like the right thing to do because there was still a lot of bullshit that was going on that
Right.
needed to be checked. That felt like the right thing, and I don't think anybody could have fathomed this length of time for it.
Yeah.
But I think we're happy to still be working and still, have an opportunity, to get out here and, use our voice for something.
I feel like so much of your role too, though, is field based, right? Like the correspondents, you guys go out and do field pieces and interview people around the country. Like how has your job shifted being stuck at home in terms of the types of stories you can tell and how you have to execute them?
We tell the same stories. The bigger difference is that performative jokes are off the table.
Yeah.
You learn how much of your jokes are in the space that you occupy, or here's a funny joke of B-roll of me walking down the street between interviews. That's gone.
Yeah.
So that part of it is very difficult. A great example. A great example would be the piece I did on alternative meats.
Oh, this was a real field piece from like a year or so ago.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. I remember that.
It was a year. Well, it might be a year by now. So the alternative meats piece required me to go into 2 different factories to see their process in creating plant-based meat.
Yep.
Plant-based, what I mean, fake meat. Whatever.
Yeah.
The show and tell of that was the piece.
Right.
Me eating a chicken nugget that was made from a cloned cell of a chicken on television, like being in that lab, being in that space, that's part of the comedy. That's a lot of the comedy in that piece. And that's a piece that goes from probably 5.5 minutes on pre-COVID to maybe 3 minutes post-COVID.
Yep. Just because you can't do that physical part of it.
If you take all you can't be on location. So automatically every joke you can make in this piece is in the chair.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I call it that's what some people call it. You got jokes that are in the chair and jokes out the chair.
Yep.
You want a 50-50 balance. So now we're in a place where a lot of the jokes are in the chair, and that's how it started. But then we started getting creative. We started moving around the house. Jabuki Young White probably is the best at it performatively in home.
Yep.
Moving around with the camera phone. But like even you can see the evolution from March till now in field pieces. Like I did a barbershop piece where I tried to cut my own hair. I was out the chair.
Yep.
And that was the barber kind of explaining things to me. So you figure out the rules, and then you learn how to break them and bend them and shift them to work into something that's applicable to you.
Yeah. And how much of that is on your shoulders? Like, I feel like so much of those pieces are made in the edit, right? It's putting the pieces together and putting the funny moments back to back. Like when you're trying to create these moments by yourself at home and sending them off to somebody to edit, like what's the learning curve on that, I guess?
We still have a producer that's on the line with us.
Yep.
Even when we're producing, producing at the house. And a lot of that is the producer's job is to watch and hear this piece as it's unfolding as a viewer, and thus be able to ask better questions or seek clarification so we can get all of that in the moment.
Gotcha.
But I get it. I understand it. But, I would be lying if I said I wasn't one of those people that was anxious for things to open back up whenever they do, because, you really, really want to have that time in the room with people.
Yep.
So the best I can do is kind of Zoom 10 minutes early and just kind of talk to them a little bit and, break the ice, things like that. And that helps.
Yeah.
Right? It's fine. It's what we have to do right now. And it's definitely better than nothing. And it's also better than not working.
Right.
So.
And I think everybody, the audience is at home too. So they're a lot more forgiving of it than they would be, if you guys just shifted to that model and everyone else was still out living their lives, it would be a much different thing.
Yeah, that's weird. Why is he at the house?
So moving on from the Daily Show for a second and just talking about sort of stand up and, that's sort of, you did that for what, 15, 20 years before the
20 years.
Yeah. You wrote this piece kind of right at the beginning of the shutdown for Vulture, just sort of saying comedy's dead for a while, guys. Take a seat. It's going to be a tough road ahead of us. How are you feeling 3 months on from writing that piece?
I feel like I was right.
Yeah.
Chappelle has shown a path through with the outdoor stuff, and Bert Kreischer's doing a bunch of drive-ins, and there's a couple clubs that are already back open, and they're running at 25% capacity. I don't think that's a sustainable fiscal business model for clubs of those sizes.
Sure.
So I still think a lot. Again, it's just we haven't bottomed out as a culture yet from COVID. And I think it's going to be important to see which way the wind blows with a second wave of an outbreak. If we get a second wave, all bets are off, bro.
Right.
Anything goes at that point. So, I don't know, man. I'm not in a rush to get back on stage, but I see a lot of comics are heading back out, and they're cool with that. More power to them. But the business of comedy, the way it's been run, one of three things has to happen if you want a pre-COVID comedy room. Ticket prices have to double, comedians have to take less, or clubs have to become smaller. Honestly, I take that back. Two of those three things have to happen.
Yep.
2 of 3 have to happen. Smaller clubs, double the ticket price, or comedians take less money. Pick 2, and that's going to be the game.
And part of what you wrote in that Vulture piece, too, was the lower you are on the food chain, the more likely you are to get pushed out by this, right?
Yeah, the more shuffling you're going to have to do. Yeah, and I think it's, the bigger the act. You watch Dave Chappelle in his 846 special play an outdoor socially distanced in a park or some farm or something like that. That isn't a standard Chappelle move.
Yep.
In the least. So, I just think that the people that play bigger arenas, they're going to be itching to get back on stage, but for sure, you got to go tune up somewhere. And if the clubs are going to double the price, then the name on the sign out front better be a name really worth seeing.
Right.
So if a club is going to double the price, the easiest way to do it is to bring in somebody that's already played bigger places. But even that's not sustainable forever. But it could be life support until there's a vaccine.
Have you thought about sort of what it would take to get you back out? Like, would it have to be half the room? Would it have to be people in masks? Like, what's your comfort level with getting back out there?
I haven't given any thought to going back out. I think August or September at the earliest right now. I've done some weird corporate shows and stuff that have been fun.
In-person shows?
No. Just over Zoom.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Not stand-up per se, but like weirdly structured comedic sessions.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Huh.
So, I think that, I might do a little bit more of that, but, I honestly am not in a rush to get back out. I do think that waiting to see that there's a grasp on this disease. For sure, meet and greets are done. There's no more photos after a show. I'm sorry. That's when I knew it was time for me to come off the road anyway. It was in Pittsburgh. The week before Daily Show shut down, I was at the Pittsburgh Improv at the end of February. And I was shaking hands and taking pictures. And then on the last show Saturday night, I was like, I've probably touched 1,200 people.
Right.
At this, literally, I've had physical contact with 1,200 people with my hands.
Right.
I don't think I should do that anymore. And so that show, that was the night. And just a switch flipped in my head, and I was like, yeah, fuck that forever.
Yeah. It was weird that stretch. I remember where that was the first advice, right? It was like, don't shake hands with people, and just sort of feeling out that etiquette with other people of like, they'd go for it. And I was the guy, around that same time that just putting my hands up like, yeah, no, we shouldn't be doing that. And like, oh yeah, no, you're right. We shouldn't be. But like, yeah, I mean, I wish we were back at that place. That was, if that's all it was don't shake hands for a little while. I would be all right with that.
Yeah.
Thinking about not just comedy clubs, but, the Daily Show. And what do you got? You have, 150, 200 seat audience there every night? Like,
yeah, I think it's like 200.
Yeah. How comfortable would you be going back to work with a live audience? Like, what do you think the future is, I guess, for a live audience show like yours?
I don't know. That's a producer question. The difference between a studio and a comedy club is that the audiences are much louder.
Yep.
and this space is bigger. So, there might be a way to space that out, I don't know. Or you just go with fewer people. You just go with a quainter, smaller, Sam B. There's a lot of shows that have audiences smaller than Daily Show
Yeah.
that sound good. You can't tell the difference on air. I feel like once you get over 50 people, it just sounds like a lot
Right.
anyway.
The difference between 50 and 500 is
Yeah,
marginal
for
at that point.
TV, for television jokes, yeah. For
Yep.
television jokes, yeah. I don't think it's that big of a difference. So, it's something to think about, but that's beyond my pay grade. My job is to show up, sit in the chair, and look in the camera and try not to fuck it up.
I've got one more question. Just you have deep roots in the Birmingham area, I know, and I saw you were down there helping with some of the cleanup after some of the rioting and things that happened, right?
Yeah, it was fun. I don't know. It's where I'm from, and it's just the right thing to do. And you see a lady on TV, cleaning up her life essentially. And, you want to try and be a part of the solution instead of, the problem. And also, much fewer people in a protest. So, from a COVID standpoint, I got to contribute and I lessen my chances of getting infected. And then you give money to the people that are going out there and taking the real risk.
Yeah.
So, that's probably the one thing that I've enjoyed the most about, or that I've discovered the most about myself in this has been like this whole charity side of me and it started with the Tip Your Wait staff with Mike Birbiglia.
This was fundraising for essentially the comedy club workers, the waiters and bar staff, and
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. This is like week 2 of quarantine when the club started to fall.
Yep.
And so we're like, yo, what are we going to do? And then, we came up with that. And then the next thing you know, like that turned into like, I think Birbiglia is still doing it to this day. Like, I know we're well over 200,000 total for various clubs
Oh
across the
wow,
country.
that's great.
Then I started raising for, local charities down here. And then we ended up here. We made the drive down after a couple of months, my family, so my son could be around his grandma a little bit.
Oh, so you're in Birmingham now.
And
You're not in New York.
correct,
Okay,
correct.
gotcha.
No,
Okay,
I left New York about a month ago.
gotcha. Okay.
And so, that's been, I don't know. It's been worth it. It's been worth the trouble to just do what I can to try to help. And, even if you can't do everything, you do what you can. So, all right, well, let me see what pro bono lawyers are out there doing stuff, and let me spread the word about that. I just think there's always ways that you can do, that you can do something,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think it's figuring that out for each person. I mean, for you, you've got this great megaphone. So yeah, I've seen you sort of amplifying, uh, as you said, pro bono lawyers for people that get arrested protesting and things like just whatever you can do to help in your way, I guess. Right? We all have a contribution to make during this time, and it's incumbent upon us to figure out what that is and how we use our own talents to help what's going on.
Probably one of the biggest lessons I got about the world was cleaning up football stadiums as a teenager.
Uh-huh.
I used to work Alabama football games. And when you're cleaning up the stadium, everybody has a different role in cleaning up the stadium, right?
Yeah.
Some people have the leaf blower, and their only job is to get everything out the rows into the aisles. And then you have a person in the aisle who's pushing it all the way down the stairs to the main entrance, to another person who has a leaf blower, to another person who has a trash can, to another person who takes the trash can to the trash truck takes it out. And somewhere in the midst of all of that, you have people that are just walking the stadium bleachers looking for wallets to steal. And so we all have a part in this. And there's always going to be some people who aren't necessarily doing the right thing, but you all have a part to play. So, you just pick up a broom and start cleaning, man.
Yeah, and I guess on that stadium analogy, it's like if everybody was going around with their own trash bag, picking up one cup at a time, it would take you forever to clean it. But if you can get in there with a leaf blower and each person has their part and
Each
figure out how
person
to
has a
do it.
part.
Yeah.
Everybody has a part. And I think the important thing is not critiquing people for not doing things the way you think they should do it. And I think that's where, things can kind of fall off the rails when it comes to trying to, find solutions in this society.
Roy Wood Jr. A lot of great stuff in there. It was so much fun to talk to him. Really, really enjoyed that conversation. Roy is on The Daily Show. He's been a correspondent there for the last 5 years. Go watch The Daily Show on Comedy Central. He also has guest spots right now on Space Force on Netflix. He has a guest role on The Last OG on TBS and on Better Call Saul. And his stand-up special is No One Loves You. Go check that out as well. All right, so that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please rate, subscribe, leave a review. Got a new show coming on Thursday. Make sure you come back for that. Until then, stay safe. Wash your hands. Wear a mask.